The red warning light had been blinking for 17 minutes when Jenna Blackwood finally acknowledged what she'd been trying to ignore. The signal wasn't random interference. It was structured, purposeful, and absolutely forbidden for her to decode. She sat alone in the communications bay of Outpost Meridian, fingers hovering over the translation matrix she wasn't supposed to activate. The deep space monitoring station hummed around her with mechanical indifference, automated systems performing their endless dance of surveillance and data collection. Through the reinforced viewing port, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, cold and distant as military protocol. Protocol 7 clearly states, she whispered to herself, mimicking Commander Harrison's gravelly voice, that any unidentified transmissions of possible alien origin are to be forwarded immediately to Xenolinguistics Command without analysis. The signal pulsed again, a cascade of frequencies that seemed almost musical, almost alive. Jenna's fingers moved to the keyboard before she could stop them. Just a preliminary scan, she told herself. Nothing that would violate direct orders. The computer screen filled with wave patterns and frequency maps, beautiful in their complexity. Whatever was transmitting this signal possessed a sophistication that made human technology look like children's toys. The airlock behind her hissed. She spun in her chair, heart hammering, expecting to see Harrison's disapproving scowl. Instead, she found herself staring at something that shouldn't exist. The being in the doorway stood nearly 7 feet tall, its form elegant and alien in ways that made her breath catch. Skin that shifted between silver and deep blue like mercury under moonlight. 4 arms, each ending in hands that possessed too many joints, too much grace. And the eyes large, multifaceted like cut gems, but warm with unmistakable intelligence. You received our transmission, it said, and Jenna's world tilted sideways. The voice was layered, harmonic, as if multiple beings spoke in perfect unison. But more disturbing was that she understood it perfectly, despite the alien lips never quite matching the sounds. Double quotes, she started, then stopped. Her training kicked in, 27 emergency protocols flooding her mind at once. Who are you? How did you get aboard this station? The being stepped fully into the communications bay, and she noticed it. Wore something that might have been clothing flowing fabric that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her eyes could properly process. I am Kefter of the Valorian Collective, and I have been waiting for someone like you to hear us. Someone like me? Jenna's hand inched toward the emergency alert, but something in those gem-like eyes made her pause. Someone who listens to Forbidden's frequencies. Kefter moved closer, and she caught a scent like ozone and midnight flowers. Someone who values understanding over orders. The proximity was making her dizzy. This close, she could see that Kefter's skin wasn't just shifting colors patterns flowed beneath the surface like living circuitry, pulsing in rhythm with the alien's words. I told myself I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered. Decoding your signal. It's against every regulation. Kefter's 4 hands moved in a complex gesture that somehow conveyed both sadness and hope. But you want to. It wasn't a question. Those multifaceted eyes seemed to look directly into her thoughts, seeing the curiosity that had driven her to join the Deep Space Monitoring Service, the hunger for contact with something greater than humanity's small corner of the galaxy. Yes, she admitted, the word feeling like stepping off a cliff. I want to understand. Then we begin, Kefter said, extending one impossibly graceful hand toward her. But know this, Jenna Blackwood, once you touch the frequency web that connects our peoples, you cannot pretend ignorance. You will become part of something larger, something your superiors fear. Jenna stared at the offered hand, acutely aware that her next choice would change everything. The station's automated systems continued their quiet hum around them, oblivious to the moment that would reshape the future of 2 species. Behind Kefter, the transmission console displayed the alien signal in all its complex beauty, waiting for someone brave enough to translate its meaning. And in the warm depths of those alien eyes, Jenna saw something that made her breath catch, not just intelligence, but recognition. As if Kefter had been searching the stars, not just for humanity, but for her specifically. She reached out and took the alien's hand. Marcus Webb's neural implants buzzed with a low-grade headache that had nothing to do with the whiskey he'd consumed 3 hours ago. The alien artifact sat on his workbench like a challenge wrapped in impossibility. A crystalline device that pulsed with its own inner light, defying every scanner he'd aimed at it. His underground lab in New Geneva hummed with illegal modifications, black market processors, and experimental neural interfaces that would make his former colleagues at Cybernetics Command weep with horror. This was exactly the kind of work that had gotten him discharged, too curious, too willing to push beyond safety protocols, too eager to merge human consciousness with foreign technology. Fascinating, isn't it? The voice came from behind him, musical and layered with harmonics. That made his skull resonate. Marcus spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for the pulse pistol he kept magnetized under his desk. The being standing in his supposedly secure laboratory made him forget about weapons entirely. She was Valorian. He'd seen the intelligence briefings, the grainy surveillance footage from first contact scenarios. But seeing Zethara in person was like witnessing lightning decide to take humanoid form. Her skin held the same mercury silver quality as others of her species, but intricate patterns of light danced beneath the surface, responding to her thoughts in real time. Where human neural interfaces required crude mechanical ports, her entire body seemed to be one vast, elegant circuit. "How did you get in here?" He managed, though part of his enhanced brain was already analyzing the impossible. She'd bypassed quantum locks, AI sentries, and neural pattern scanners without triggering a single alarm. "Through frequencies your security doesn't recognize," Zaira said, moving closer with fluid grace. "We've been watching your work, Marcus Webb, your willingness to push beyond the boundaries of flesh and circuit." Her forearms moved in complex patterns as she spoke, and Marcus realized with a start that she was communicating on multiple levels audible words, electromagnetic pulses that his implants could barely interpret, and something else that felt like thoughts being gently placed in his mind. "You want to analyze our technology," she continued, "but your instruments can only see the surface. To truly understand, you would need to interface directly." Marcus looked at the artifact, then back at Zethara. His modification-enhanced brain ran probability calculations, risk assessments, protocol violations. All of them screamed danger. Direct interface with alien tech? That's how you end up as a vegetable with really expensive hobbies. Or how you discover that consciousness isn't limited to biological substrates. Zethara extended one graceful hand toward him. "I am what you might call a data dancer. I can guide you through the interface safely, show you how information itself can become art, experience, transformation. My supervisors would have me shot. Your supervisors fear what they cannot control." Her gem-like eyes seemed to look directly into his thoughts through his neural ports. "But you've already modified yourself beyond their recognition. What's one more boundary?" Marcus felt the familiar hunger that had driven him to black market implants and underground research, the need to know, to experience, to become more than baseline human limitations allowed. The artifact pulsed brighter, as if responding to his elevated heart rate. "I told myself we shouldn't be doing this," he whispered, his hand moving toward the neural interface cables that would connect him directly to alien consciousness. "This kind of merger, it could rewrite my entire neural architecture." Zethara's patterns of light shifted to something that might have been a smile. "But you want to." He did. more than he'd wanted anything since his first illegal modification. The chance to experience alien thought, to understand technology that made human achievements look primitive, to become something new. It called to every enhanced neuron in his skull. "Connect with me, Marcus Webb," Zathara said softly. "Let me show you what data can become when it learns to dance." Dr. Elena Vasquez had always believed that plants were the most honest organisms in the universe. They didn't lie, manipulate, or hide their intentions behind diplomatic protocol. They simply existed, grew, and adapted with a purity that made her xenobotany lab on Titan Station feel like a sanctuary. Until the Valorian specimens started whispering. It began as vibrations in the soil sensors, patterns too complex to be random root growth. Then the atmospheric readings changed, not just oxygen production, but trace compounds that seemed to pulse in mathematical sequences. By the third week, Helena could no longer pretend the plants weren't trying to communicate. She stood before the containment unit, watching the alien flora that defied every classification system humanity had developed. The primary specimen resembled a tree crossed with a neural network, its translucent bark revealing flowing channels of luminescent fluid. Smaller symbiotic plants clustered around its base, their leaves shifting colors and waves that reminded her uncomfortably of brain activity. "Beautiful, aren't they?" The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the lab's air filtration system. Elena spun around, scanner in hand, but found no intruder. "Security breach in Lab 7, she called into her unit, but only static answered. "Your communication devices cannot function here," the voice continued, gentle and amused. "The network absorbs electromagnetic signals and translates them into growth patterns. You've been feeding us your data transmissions for weeks." A section of the lab wall seemed to shimmer, and suddenly a being stepped through what Elena had thought was solid metal, tall and graceful like the other Valorians she'd seen in briefings. But this one's skin held a greenish undertone, and tiny flowering buds grew along the curve of the being's elongated skull. "I am Morton," the being said, forearms spreading in a gesture that made nearby plants lean toward the movement. "Biosculptor of the growing worlds. And you are the tender who has been caring for our children." "Children?" Elena looked at the contained specimens with new eyes. "These are ... offspring?" "In a sense. Each plant is both individual and part of our collective consciousness. They grow, learn, and communicate across vast distances, connecting worlds through root networks that span solar systems." Morton moved closer, and Elena noticed that the aliens' footsteps left tiny sprouts in their wake. "Your people study them as mere vegetation. You miss the conversation entirely." Elena's scientific mind reeled. The biosignatures, the electromagnetic patterns, they're not just communicating. They're thinking, feeling, remembering. Every Valorian world is connected through networks like these. We are never truly alone, because the gardens carry our thoughts across the void. Morton's gem-like eyes focused on her with unsettling intensity. "But your species poisons worlds, turns living planets into industrial graveyards. We needed to know if any humans could understand symbiosis. That's why you let us capture these specimens. You were testing us." "Testing you specifically, Doctor." Elena Vasquez. "Your research patterns, your genetic modifications to create sustainable ecosystems. We've been watching. You understand that life seeks connection, not dominance." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lab's climate control. "My supervisors want to weaponize these plants, turn them into biological warfare agents. We know." Morton extended one graceful hand toward the containment unit. "But you could choose differently. Join your consciousness to the network. Experience what it means to think as a forest, to feel as a planet. That's impossible. Human neural structure, isn't compatible with plant consciousness. Not yet. But with modification, with symbiosis. Morten's hand touched the containment barrier, and the plants inside pulsed with brighter light. You could become the bridge between our species. Help humanity understand that consciousness isn't limited to individual minds in isolated bodies. Elena stared at the thriving garden that had somehow established itself in her sterile lab. Every instinct screamed that this was beyond dangerous merging human consciousness with an alien collective that spanned star systems. But another part of her, the part that had spent years trying to create harmony between species and ecosystems, whispered that this might be humanity's only chance to truly understand their place in a living universe. I told myself we shouldn't be doing this, she whispered, her hand moving toward the containment controls. Consciousness merger with an alien network. It would fundamentally change what it means to be human. Morten's expression shifted to something that might have been a smile, and flowers bloomed along the alien's arms. But you want to. Elena looked at the waiting garden, at the being who offered connection beyond anything humanity had imagined, and felt the pull of roots that could span galaxies. Captain Riley Torres had seen enough war to know when a battlefield was too quiet. The abandoned military outpost on Kepler 442b should have been crawling with scavengers, pirates, or at least automated defense systems still running their programs. Instead, it sat in perfect silence, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. She moved through the corridors with practiced caution, pulse rifle charged and neural combat implants running full tactical analysis. Command had sent her to retrieve classified data from the outpost's core before it fell into enemy hands. But the intel hadn't mentioned why the base had been abandoned in the first place. The answer waited in the command center, standing motionless before a wall of dead monitors like a statue carved from starlight. The Valorian was Ancient Riley, could sense it immediately, where the others of their species she'd encountered. Moved with fluid grace, this one held the stillness of geological time. The being's silver-blue skin had taken on an opalescent quality that spoke of centuries, and the patterns flowing beneath the surface moved with the slow rhythm of deep meditation. Captain Riley Torres, the being said without turning around, voice carrying harmonics that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her bones. Warrior of the Steel Brigade, veteran of the Proxima campaign, carrier of memories she wishes she could forget. Riley kept her weapon trained on the alien's back, though something in her combat instincts whispered that violence would be useless here. How do you know my service record? Because I was there. The being turned slowly, revealing eyes that held depths like looking into galactic cores. I am Zinthara, keeper of the deep memories. And you and I have met before, though you cannot remember. Impossible. First contact with your species was 18 months ago. First contact with the current iteration of your species, Zinthara corrected, moving closer with steps that seemed to leave impressions of light on the metal floor. But humanity has risen and fallen many times in this galaxy's long history, as have the Valorians, as have a dozen other species whose names are lost to time. Riley's tactical implants screamed warnings, but her finger hesitated on the trigger. Something about the alien's presence felt familiar in a way that made her teeth ache. You're talking about reincarnation. Previous civilizations. I am talking about the wheel of consciousness that turns through cosmic ages, carrying souls. Between forms, between species, between the rise and fall of empires. Zinthara's 4 arms moved in complex patterns that seemed to paint meaning directly into Riley's visual cortex. Some memories transcend death, transcend evolution, transcend the boundaries between human and Valorian. That's impossible. Is it? You dream of silver cities you've never seen. You wake with the taste of alien sunlight on your tongue. In battle, you sometimes hear voices speaking languages that don't exist, offering tactical advice that saves your unit's lives. Riley's weapon lowered slightly. Those dreams, those impossible moments of clarity, she'd never told anyone about them. Command would have her psychologically evaluated and probably discharged. The current war between our peoples, Xanthara continued, is not the first. We have fought and made peace and fought again across millennia, souls reborn into different forms, but carrying the same patterns, the same connections, the same tragic inability to remember what we once meant to each other. You're saying I was Valorian in a past life? I am saying that consciousness is more fluid than your science understands, that love and loyalty and sacrifice echo across incarnations, that the warriors standing before me once flew alongside me in ships made of living crystal, defending worlds whose names are now stellar dust. Xanthara's hand moved to a device at the aliens built something that looked like crystallized memory made solid. I can show you. Share the deep memories that survive death itself. But to receive them, you would need to open your mind completely. Allow consciousness that is not your own to flow through your neural pathways. Riley's combat training ward. With something deeper, something that recognized the ancient sorrow in Xanthara's eyes. My orders are to secure this facility and eliminate any alien presence. Your orders come from beings who repeat the same mistakes across cosmic cycles, who fear connection more than extinction. The Memory Keeper's voice carried infinite patience. But you have always chosen differently, Riley Torres. In every incarnation, you choose understanding over orders. I told myself we shouldn't be doing this, Riley whispered, her weapon fully lowered now. Sharing memories with an alien consciousness. It could shatter my mind, leave me unable to distinguish between past and present lives. Xanthara's expression shifted to something that transcended species recognition, hope, and the weight of love that had survived the death of civilizations. But you want to remember. Riley looked at the memory crystal, at the being who claimed to know her across incarnations, and felt something in her soul, recognized the truth of ancient connections that refused to die. The Nexus existed in the space between spaces, a hidden station that belonged to neither human nor Valorian territory. Built from technologies that predated both civilizations, it drifted in the cosmic void like a secret waiting to be discovered. And now, for the first time in centuries, all its chambers hummed with life. Jenna Blackwood materialized on the transport platform with Kethter beside her, still adapting to the neural modifications that allowed her to hear the frequency songs. That connected Valorian minds across vast distances. Marcus Webb arrived moments later with Xanthara, his enhanced consciousness, crackling with data streams that painted impossible geometries in the air around them. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped through what appeared to be a living wall, her body now, hosting symbiotic organisms that connected her to the vast plant networks spanning multiple worlds. Flowers bloomed in her footsteps, and her eyes held the deep green wisdom of forests that had been dreaming for millennia. Captain Riley Torres was the last to arrive, guided by Xanthara through corridors that existed in folded spacetime. The Memory Keeper had shown her lifetimes of connection between their species, and now Riley moved with the fluid grace of someone who remembered flying in crystal ships among the stars. They gathered in the central chamber, a spherical room whose walls displayed the swirling patterns of galactic history. Humans and Valorians together, changed by their connections, no longer quite what they had been before. A moment approaches. Kethter said, the harmonic layers of the alien's voice now perfectly clear to Jenna's modified hearing. Both our fleets gather at the boundary zone. Within hours, the war that has been brewing will finally begin. Unless we choose differently, added Xanthara, her data streams interfacing directly with the station's ancient computers. The Nexus was built as a bridge between species, a place where consciousness could transcend the boundaries of flesh and form. We 4 pairs were chosen specifically humans willing to cross forbidden's boundaries, Valorians willing to risk connection with alien minds. Elena felt the vast plant network stirring across multiple star systems. Their collective consciousness focused on this moment. The networks have been preparing for this convergence. Every garden world, every symbiotic forest, every root system. That spans solar distances. They're all connected to what happens here. As are the memory streams, Zenthara added, ancient eyes reflecting depths of time that made galaxies seem young. Every soul that has chosen connection over isolation, love over fear, understanding over orders their experiences flow through this station. Past and present and possible futures, all waiting for us to choose. Marcus's enhanced neural processes analyzed probability cascades, seeing potential timelines branch and converge around their decision. The war isn't inevitable. Both sides are driven by fear of the other, but if we can demonstrate true synthesis human and Valorian consciousness, working as one, we could show them a different path. At the cost of our own species' identity, Riley said, though her voice held no fear. The memories Zinthara had shared showed her civilizations that had transcended such limitations, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Not loss, Jenna corrected, feeling the frequency songs that now flowed through her thoughts. Evolution. Both our species are approaching a threshold where individual consciousness becomes part of something larger. We can guide that transformation, or watch it tear us apart. The station's walls shifted, showing real-time images of the gathering fleet's human ships, bristling with weapons designed to counter Valorian biotechnology, alien vessels that pulsed with living light, preparing to defend their collective worlds. 2 species on the brink of mutual annihilation, driven by the same fear that had destroyed countless civilizations before them. The choice is simple, Elena said, her symbiotic organisms blooming with patterns that spelled hope in languages older than speech. We become the bridge, or we watch everything burn. Together, Marcus added, his data streams reaching out to connect with Valorian frequencies, human neural patterns, plant network communications, and memory flows that transcended linear time. They stood in a circle, 4 humans and 4 Valorians, hands and appendages touching, consciousness preparing to merge across species barriers. The Nexus responded to their decision, ancient systems awakening that could broadcast their merged awareness to both fleets, showing them what cooperation could achieve. I told myself we shouldn't be doing this, Riley whispered, feeling the weight of species transformation in her hands, abandoning our separate identities to become something unprecedented. Kethter's gem-like eyes held starlight and infinite possibility. But we want to. They did. More than they wanted their old limitations, their tribal fears, their species-bound thinking. Together, they reached toward a synthesis that would echo across the galaxy, choosing connection over isolation, transcendence over the comfortable boundaries that had kept both their people small. The merge began, and the universe held its breath as 2 species took their first steps toward becoming something magnificent and new.